Hello.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hey, we're here.
Cool. On the road, it sounds like.
Yes.
Did you
Um,
guys go down to California for a vacation or?
uh, of sorts, yeah. Visit family.
Oh,
My
family.
mom,
Okay.
my mom lives down here.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, that's cool. You were able to do that.
Yeah,
Nice weather, a lot of smoke, but nice weather.
Yeah.
finally got some time off to be able to do it. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, makes a nice road trip. And actually, how bad was the smoke for you guys in Idaho?
Pretty
When,
bad for a while.
when we left,
Yeah.
the day we left, it got a lot worse because the wind changed and everything from Oregon went straight to Boise. So, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Nevada was
wow.
bad. Parts of Utah were pretty smoky. Down here was pretty hazy. It's not terrible. It's not floating around the valley so much, but you just can't see the ocean like you normally could.
Yeah.
But it's definitely
Pretty clear
there's an
today.
effect.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it was. Well, I live right in the center of all the fires. Basically,
No,
there was on our west side was fires in Lincoln City. You know, on our east side was Portland and all the fires past Portland. Um, yeah, I mean Salem was on kind of our south side, so we definitely had a ton of smoke. But recently got rain and it's definitely cleared the skies and it's definitely nicer outside right now.
hopefully help with the fires too.
Yeah, yeah. We got a pretty good amount of rain too, so that's good.
It's good.
Good. I think Boise did too, right?
Actually, you got thunderstorms overnight.
Yeah, yeah. We it was thunderstorms. So I had a couple of loud thunder and lightning, all that good stuff. So, how you guys been doing?
Working. It's been a blessing.
Yeah,
Really
nice.
hard.
Yeah, I was telling my daughter about what you do for work and how it's kind of a niche thing, but there's this huge, huge opportunity for people who are willing to do that kind of work. It's sounds like you've had a never-ending supply of work.
For about, how long have I been there? Almost a year now.
I think so.
Yeah,
You work through the winter.
I worked through the winter, so yeah, coming up on a year. It's just been slamming busy,
Yeah,
and it's actually surprised me how many hot tubs are flying around this valley.
That valley.
New, used, disposals, it doesn't matter. We haul them away, we move them.
yeah.
And
That's an interesting thought. In my mind when you were telling me about it, I imagined just brand new ones, but I guess yeah, it makes sense. You guys would be moving. You know, somebody
yeah,
buys a used one from someone or whatever, they still got to move it. So
Craigslist, or it's just a piece of junk and we don't want it here anymore. We take it to the dump. It still has to be moved. And he's
yeah,
pretty low overhead, minimal equipment, and for $250 it goes away.
yeah,
And for most people, they don't even bat an eye at it.
yeah. And are you guys actually even are you purchasing them or is this merely just a moving thing?
Just moving,
Yeah.
purely moving. Yep. We
Hmm.
could have some. So if you had a hot tub that you wanted disposed of, but we deemed it still in working condition, and we've
Hmm.
talked about this, we haven't done it yet, but
Hmm.
it's like we don't have to take it to the dump.
Yeah.
We dump it in the yard and refurbish it and sell it. So
Hmm.
we've talked about doing that a little bit. And some of them are absolute pieces of garbage.
Right.
But other ones are just, they don't want it there.
Right. They're
And
done
it
done
might be a
with it.
little old. but it works. And we're like, why not refurbish it? Why not just go through it, make sure it works fine, and flip it around on Craigslist for a couple grand, you know?
Yeah.
So
That
we
is a
thought about
different
that.
business model. It is,
Yep.
a different, it might even take, more manpower or whatever, but,
Yeah, it'll take some extra time. You know, you
yeah,
don't just go home and plop down on the couch after work. Now you got to go out and put some loving on a hot tub and flip it around and make sure that you can get some money out of it. But we've talked about it, and we might do it
yeah,
because they're hiring us to haul it away, and they don't care where it goes. They just want it out.
right.
So some of them come out in pieces, some of them come out intact. They just don't want it anymore. And
Yeah.
those are the ones that you can, somebody wants a cheap hot tub. It might not have 85 jets. It might only have 30 jets, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, still does the work. Hot water with bubbles. Yeah.
so yeah, we're looking into some stuff. I mean, it's not my business, it's his.
Yeah.
He's done really well with it. It's an absolute niche for sure.
Hmm.
Not a lot of competition.
Make it your business. Make Dave's Hot Tubs again.
But no, it's been a blessing. I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I think you could probably make something like that work anywhere too. If you ended up moving to a different state or whatever, it's just something that people need and would use. So
Yeah, I would have to buy my own equipment at that point, which is, about $5,000 or $6,000 investment in trailer and stuff. But
that's nothing for starting a business. That's a
it really
very
isn't.
low investment to start a business.
That's your major equipment. Then your tools, which I already have,
Yeah.
and then it's a matter of building.
You already have the truck.
Your client. Yeah, I already have the truck.
Yeah.
Building the clientele after that, finding a helper, and just sail with it.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Definitely a big door to have open for me. So
yeah, no,
I'm grateful for it.
It's great that, and I know you guys were struggling there for a while, so it's good that the Lord provided and has, kind of put that worry to rest at least. So
For now, I mean, I know things can change tomorrow.
yeah,
They always do. This is why I'm trying to be not foolish. Just plan ahead and prepare and give a little bit of a cushion if we need it. But yeah, definitely been able to do a lot of payback too, which I don't know if I told you, but we've been able to do a lot of payback,
that's good.
which feels really good.
Yeah. How have your conversations been going with your coworker?
Really not at all.
Yeah.
I just haven't explored it. Maybe that's my fault, but
Well, you said there for a while he was asking some tough questions, so.
he was asking questions, and yeah, he wants proof. He wants to see it. He has no faith. He wants proof. I need to see it.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how to answer that,
Yeah, I get that. I think that's our human nature that wants to have some miracle, some absolute proof, and yet the proof is all around us. We just don't see the miracle that's in what's actually around us all the time. So the proof of a changed life, the proof of a person who was one way and then the Lord comes into their life and they become something better or something else.
Well, we get along pretty well, but he's very angry.
Yeah. Probably had some tough times, or
Um,
Well, he
I wanna
went
say-
through some tough times.
he went through some stuff, you know, not like I went through some stuff, but just demanding proof. And I was like, I don't have proof to hand you other than, like you said, what's sitting around us. So if you can't see that, if you're so blinded by whatever's blinding you that you can't see it, I don't know how to resolve that.
Yeah.
I mean, a tomato plant grows in the garden. How?
Yeah.
I mean, let's take it down to the simplest thing.
You would argue science.
I know.
Yeah. Well, science is only the
Science is man trying to explain what's around them.
right. It's discovered truth. It's not the creation of truth.
Right.
Science doesn't make things real. It only discovers what God has already created or made.
It's twisted and it's perverted, I guess I should say,
Hmm.
to the point where God is taken out of the equation altogether.
Yeah.
That's my problem with science.
Well, and again, that's a bias issue, right? You can have scientists who believe in God and they have the same evidence put in front of them, but they will come to a different conclusion on how it got there.
Exactly. We got one scientist that believes in God and goes, okay, well, the earth is 6,000 years old. You got another scientist that doesn't believe in God and it says it's 6 billion years old.
Right.
I have to call bullshit on that. I'm sorry.
Well, the need for 6 billion years is really it's only a number that actually changes over time based on their need to make their theories work. So
Exactly. I mean, I can explain everything you just explained by telling you the story of the flood.
yeah.
I mean, that's really what happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of good evidence of a flood, and again, many scientists who are non-Christian will admit that there was probably some catastrophic event that happened, right?
I like that. That's exactly what they say too.
Yeah,
Catastrophic event, meteor, asteroid,
something, yeah,
flood, all the above.
Something happened to the earth.
Yeah.
right. But to accept the recorded storyline of that catastrophic event as recorded in Scripture, it's just a place they can't go or won't go. So
No, and I had a friend that grew up. I grew up with him, and his dad actually was one of the VPs at Pacific Press.
mhm.
He was a missionary in India, so Marty lived in India for a while. But he went into physics, and he became an atheist
Mhm.
due to his education in physics.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what happened. We don't talk about it a lot, but wow,
Well, I know I've heard there's a lot of pressure in the academic community that if you try and hold on to your belief in God, you will not be accepted in that community. And so it really puts a lot of pressure on people who come in believing in God, but they will come out opposed to God simply because it's either that or you don't have a job in that community anymore. They recognize that.
And that's probably what happened because he did go on to his doctorate and then went into research. So
Yeah.
in order to pave his way, he probably had to make that decision, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Hey, Dave and Chris Ann from Idaho are on.
Oh,
They're
hi,
actually
Dave.
traveling from California back to Idaho. They went down to visit family,
And Chris Ann. Hi.
Hi.
So you guys are driving right now?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Just
Oh,
hit the road.
just hit the road. Well, happy Sabbath to you. Enjoy your drive.
Working.
Yeah. Hope you safe driving. Straight up 15.
So Dave has has this job with a guy who runs a business, and basically what they do is move hot tubs, and they've been super busy. But his boss, they have spiritual conversations every once in a while, and his boss has kind of boiled his I don't know, thought down to, I need proof. I want proof that God exists, and no one can show me proof. So Dave and I have talked about this a little bit, but I'd be curious to hear if you had somebody coming to you with that kind of question, and from all intents and purposes, it sounds like an honest question. It's not like he's trying to be mean or anything to Dave. How would you address that question if somebody came to you with that?
Well, just going off of face value, to be quick about it, of the question, the way you described it, my first response would be, that is true. You do just like I did, and it's super important that you get it. That's all I'd say.
Super important that you get it?
Yep.
Get what?
The proof.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I mean, I would acknowledge that that's needed. In my statement, I said, that's true. You do need it, just like I did, which means I already got it. Right? By the way I said it, it leaves the open door. Oh, wait a minute. You sound like you think you have it, meaning the proof. And then re-acknowledging that it's super important that you get it, meaning even though nobody's ever been able to show it to you yet to your satisfaction, or you haven't seen it or found it yet, I acknowledge that it's important that you have a chance to get it. And then I'm done, because that leaves, again, the statement that it is important, that it's a legitimate question, it's a legitimate need, a need that I myself had. And if he wants to pursue that with like a response that's like, well, wait a minute, you sound like you did get it, then I'm going to say, I did, when I met him face to face. And then I'm done again, because this is about inviting them to switch from I will find every reason to doubt, to, wait a minute, are you wanting it? Because if you do, you're going to chase it, even if there's a slight hint of it. And I can't make that in somebody. I can't convince them with enough information that they'll finally be convinced they have proof. So if it's about the Holy Spirit cracking the heart open and inviting them to shift from, I'm just going to call it for quick explanation, unbelief to belief, only the Holy Spirit can accomplish that. I'm just the casual observer of the possibility of God doing for the person what he already did for me. So I know it's real, I know it's true, and I know it's possible, but I cannot wave a wand and make it. Anyway, that's...
See, Dave, I knew he'd have a better answer than mine.
What do you mean? What was yours?
Well, mine was, the evidence is all around us, but that would be, again, me trying to solve the guy's problem, right? Trying to...
working on the info angle.
Right, trying to provide him with the evidence instead of just acknowledging his need for it and saying...
So let me explain for Dave's benefit, the reason that I answer that way. I'm going to tell you where I get that, some of that, well, one place I get that from. There was a man who came looking for Jesus, but he didn't find Jesus. He found his disciples, because Jesus was up on the mountain with Peter, James, and John, but the rest of the disciples were there. And he said to the disciples, the man said to the disciples, please help me, my son is demon possessed. I came looking for Jesus. And the disciples stepped in to try to fix it without Jesus, because they were going by the evidence that it worked before when Jesus sent them out. And so they stepped in, and it's interesting to watch how the man then really kind of, whatever little bit of maybe hope and faith he had kind of gets crumbled. And now he doesn't really have belief, because when Jesus does come into the picture, he says to Jesus, if you can help me, right? So we start out with, he's got no belief, no faith, whatever little bit he had probably got shattered by the disciples. So I'm taking that as a pattern of there are many people out there whose picture of God or possible belief in God has been shattered and destroyed by so many of us that taught Christianity but pattern something else, something not good, and information not fixing it. There's a lot of people that, that's their kind of honest and yet for good reason belief or thought process. And I know that in the picture, the only thing that'll help this guy, meaning the father that had this demon-possessed boy, is for Jesus to actually show up. And so I want to veer away from me being one of the disciples who thinks I can wave that wand and fix it, and instead maybe go, okay, well, just hold on, because Jesus should be here any minute. And then we're waiting, and the guy's saying, well, is he coming? Is he coming? Yeah, he's coming. And then when Jesus actually shows up, appears to the man, whatever man we're talking about, woman, then God can do some things that will bring about an experiential evidence that I can observe, I can watch it happen, I can get excited when I see it happening, but I cannot make it happen. So anyway, that's kind of my premise for why I choose to respond the way that I do to that. So I don't know if that's helpful. But.
Yes, and here's what's going to happen. What's your proof? What was your proof?
Yeah, and that's happening. In fact, John observed this happen under quite a lengthy challenge, kind of on and on towards me with some people. And I was kind of just waiting, because if they can get to that, if they actually will ask that, that's what I'm hoping for. And where I'm going to go with that is that I'm going to dive into how damaging false Christianity has been on everybody, which is going to be usually a little surprising, because they're expecting the standard, well, what you really need to do is just believe that the Bible is true, read the Bible, and then go to church, and then, you'll eventually believe. That's, I'm putting a very quick, honest, that's normally our approach. And what I want to do is, if they ask me, what is my proof? I want to tell them about how what I had was empty, dead religion. What I had was growing up with stories and info that I didn't comprehend what it meant to really know God until I met him. And I'm going to throw that on the table, and I'm hoping they'll want to pursue, what do you mean you met him? Because then I want to use that opportunity to sort of describe the truth about what he's like, that he showed me, versus what I thought. So as an example, you've heard me talk about love, forgiveness, healing, wrath. So God's wrath might be one I might throw in a quick sort of just conversation where they say, well, what did you get for proof? And I'm going to do the little bit of preamble of, well, what I had was empty, dead religion. And then when I met God, here's one thing that I saw right away. And I'm just going on with the assumption that it's okay for me to talk about the fact that I met him, because I wouldn't have seen or learned this stuff unless I met him. But I don't have to explain all that to them. And as I began to describe, this is what I've seen happen many times, not always, but many times. As I began to describe what I began to see in God as I met Jesus, and contrasting that with the false ideas and false concepts, something happens inside of them. I'm talking about the one that's asking honestly and open-heartedly and really does want the proof. Something starts happening inside of them. Belief springs up almost, to my eyes, out of nowhere. And their question evaporates from, show me the proof, buddy, to, wait a minute, could that really be true? Is that really true about God? And then, so I'll give you just one story real quick, which everybody else on here has heard me tell many times. And that is the teenage girl I was reading to her out of Desire of Ages, actually, and she decided she needed to tell me that she didn't believe in the author of that book, Ellen White, right? And I said, oh, well, that's okay. You can't believe in that. And so I put the book down and I picked up the Bible and started to show the same thing about God that I was trying to share out of the Bible. And then finally she interrupts me and she says, I need to tell you, I don't believe in the Bible either. Now, this was at a Seventh-day Adventist Academy, so I obviously was starting with the assumption that she would be open to those things. But now she's telling me, no, not even the Bible. So I did the same thing. I said, okay, you can't, I guess. And I put the book down and I continued to talk about what I was trying to say about Jesus. And the weirdest thing was, you'd expect that after her first two statements, if I kept talking about Jesus, she'd just get up and leave. And I have had that happen too, where people just, no, sorry, I'm not listening. But this girl, she kept listening. And so I kept talking. As long as she was going to listen, I'm just going to add some more ideas to the thing, until finally she said, well, okay, that gives me something to think about. She went away, but the next day at the academy, she walked up, sat down next to me again, and she said, so you were saying yesterday, and it was amazing how much she could recount of what I was saying about God. And she said, does it say that in the Bible? And of course, my temptation was to tell her, well, I thought you didn't believe in the Bible. What good's it going to do for us to look in there? But I didn't. I said, oh, yeah, let me show you. And I opened it up, and now she's reading it. Only she's reading it with an honest-hearted question of, could what I was saying about God that was different than she learned growing up really be in the Bible? Well, this went on for about an hour. We kept talking and reading. And then 2 days later, she comes back again. And now this was her next question. Does it say that in Ellen White? So I opened up Desire of Ages, and we were right back to where I was, 2 or 3 days before. Now, how does that happen? Meaning, how did that suddenly change in her heart? That's not really something for me to try to explain or to try to figure out how to accomplish. I just know the pattern of offering them not just verses and info, but offering them some clear ideas that are true about God that are different. If that can open the heart, if the Holy Spirit is working there and getting into the heart, then, the verse says, Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all to me. That means even some will be drawn who will later reject. And so again, it's not my part to figure out, are they accepting or are they rejecting, or who's accepting, who's rejecting. It's just my part to keep putting the simple info in front of them. So really what we're coming to is to give this kind of answer, or to be able to help somebody with this kind of answer. It's not a verse or two or a theory. It is knowing Jesus, God's face, and being familiar with it enough to be able to describe it to people whose hearts might be being worked on by the Holy Spirit. And when that connection, when that sort of synergy happens, God accomplishes things that are nothing short of miraculous. And I've had a lot of people who have started with the question of show me the proof, where let's say this was successful in the angle of them really being open to hearing and being excited about what they heard. They never seem to come back and say to me, well, so we still haven't really got an answer to our first question. Now, some right at the beginning, not really wanting that to be open to them or not being open to the Spirit, they will say at some point in the conversation, which John observed this when the one I was referring to, where I offered up that stuff and offered up me just describing when I met him face to face, what I saw, them going, yeah, okay, whatever, and walking away from it. And nobody can fix that, right? Maybe a year or two, whatever down the road, they'll come around to that but it's the Holy Spirit. This is where I rest in. The Holy Spirit is working on every soul, every person, from when they're born, from before they're born, all the way until there is full and complete rejection at some point. And that won't be everybody, but any time before that, the Holy Spirit is working on it, whether I'm asleep or not paying attention or whatever. So I have to put my rest in that and just accept that Jesus said, if I be lifted up. So don't lift up my theories or lift up my smartness or lift up my whatever. Let's just put Jesus on the table. And if that fixes it, it does. And if it doesn't, it, like with Judas, it won't. And any other formula ends up being just philosophical bantering that never accomplishes much more than argumentative discourse or argumentative trying to prove. So I approached that whole thing, Dave, with the excitement that anybody's asking that question, and yet kind of an angle of knowing that this is really about me or you or whoever wanting to be able to see and see or observe and sensitive to the work that the Spirit might be doing on that other person, and then simultaneously being open to be used as a tool in the Lord's hand to do it something, right? And not really just about, okay, I can show you these 10 verses and that should prove it to you. That hasn't helped most any of us. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
No, you're good. You're good.
It's fun though. I mean, like I say, John watched that. He tells that story about watching that happen. And these people were very antagonistic philosophically. And the work was mostly just not to enter into that philosophical argument. And John did get to see where I did put that statement on the table of, well, it all changed when I met him. And the guy putting up all the arguments said, what do you mean you met him? So anyway.
In his mind, you were saying that you met someone that he thought was just a fantasy or a total fallacy.
Right. Like the table's not really here. So what do you mean you touched it? That's where he was.
Yeah. But it was interesting that they got so heated. It was a very heated conversation, very angry. In fact, at one point, one of them had kind of spittle coming out of their mouth a little bit. But that the approach was just to keep saying, yeah, all these things you're saying are true about false Christianity, which ultimately is going to lead them to, at one point, hopefully, ask the question, well, then what are you saying true Christianity is?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and by they, John was meaning the two that were philosophically attacking. They got pretty worked up, and my response continued to be to acknowledge the parts that they were saying that were true as true, meaning, yep, that's true. That is a real problem. Because they would describe, well, Christianity this, Christianity that, and so that's why I kept on yeah, that's true. That is a problem, and that's a huge problem, and it's not real, not true, which was all what John was saying. It was an offering of, okay, but just ask me what real, what true is. what would real Christianity be? And so anyway, it was interesting and fun activity, even though in that one, the end of it wasn't yet like the teenage girl I was talking about.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Sabbath. Got a nice group going on here.
Yes, happy Sabbath, everybody.
I think we have on the schedule to kind of do some more study into Hebrews, but you guys have been around us long enough to know that we don't always have to stick to a specific program. And so I think I'd like to just put on the table first and foremost, before we actually start reading Hebrews, is there anything on anyone's mind, any topic, any question, any worry, any concern? Yeah, we're a group of people who just want to learn from the Lord and study together, and we don't have to follow any set script, especially if there's someone who just really has something weighing heavily on their heart, speak up. This is a safe place to do so.
Well, and we can say for those that were coming in during our preamble, yes, we got on a little bit early and we're chatting with friends of ours that are Dave and Chris Ann. So let me say, Dave, real quick that, yeah, if you want, I was trying to go real fast and quick on that. If you want to talk any more about that, happy to do it when you got time, always. So just keep me posted. But we were talking about the question of how do you, how can you help answer someone who's saying, well, about God, is, well, I've never seen real proof. And so you got to show me, I want to see proof. And so that was what we were on our pre-discussion about. But let's maybe have prayer, and then let's open it up to, yeah, if anybody's got, I'm going to ask some questions about Hebrews, but if anybody's got anything different, like John said, throw it on the table, because it actually might be, if whatever your question is, it might connect right into what we're working on in Hebrews anyway. So, and then obviously we're never stuck to just Hebrews. So, let's see. I see Chantel out there this morning. Hi, Chantel. Are you driving?
Hi. No, I just got on. I actually just woke up.
Oh.
I had a long week. It was like
Okay.
10:30 already.
Yeah. Well, the weeks do get
Good morning.
long.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you to have prayer, but maybe if you're feeling groggy, you might. Would you like to have opening prayer for us?
I don't mind.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Dear Father, I just want to thank you for our group here, that we could come together and learn more about you and your character and whatever's on anybody's heart today, and that it may rain in us and bring change and bring honor to your name, Lord. And we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So, does anybody have something you either want to share from the week, or share what you're working on before we just dive into reading in Hebrews? We do like everybody to have that opportunity.
I was talking to Barb yesterday, and I told her I was struggling with understanding if the ultimate goal is him to save us, why does he have to keep doing these measures like the flood and Sodom and Gomorrah? Like, maybe it all comes back to choices, and I find myself blaming him and not sin. But it was inviting a lot of negative thoughts that I was struggling to reason with. Like, are these all wins on Satan's part? Like, how are we making any ground if he constantly has to start over?
That's a great question, actually, and very legitimate. And while it is true, Shady, that if we don't kind of come to an understanding of that, it will start to feel heavy and darker because it's a question that's at the root of, wait a minute, if God's really that good, then how come he was doing this, this, and this? But it's a good question and a legitimate one. So now, were you thinking of this connected to where we were the other day with recounting out of the story about Stephen and his history account of the nation of Israel?
A little bit, but I was in the flood of patriarchs and prophets.
Oh, okay.
And then Barb and I were reading a scripture out of Hebrews 2, and I just got frustrated because I feel like we spend so much time studying his true character, but these scriptures sound so punishable and like.
So it is connected to Hebrews. Can you tell me what verse it was in Hebrews that
Yeah, I'll go to it right now.
sort of popped that direction? Anybody else who's got thoughts either along the same question as Shady or comments about it, feel free to jump in while she's looking.
Maybe it was Hebrews 1.
I think, Shady, I just logged on because I had an emergency. But anyway, I caught the end of your question. I'm thinking it was Hebrews 2:2 or something like that. Is that where we were? Somewhere
Yes.
in that part?
Yes.
It was early Hebrews 2 anyway.
Yeah, it's so the original reading that we started with NLT, which is Hebrews 2:2.
Okay.
And it said, "For the message God delivered through angels has always stood firm, and every violation of the law and every act of disobedience was punished." And I didn't like that, so we went over to New King James, and that one said, "For if the word spoken through angels proved steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just reward." It's not the reward part that I liked. It's the a just that I liked better than
A justice reward, a reward that was justice.
Yeah,
What
it
if you-
reminded me more of like every action has a consequence, opposed to the NLT that was like,
God punished them all.
yeah.
Yeah, Amplified uses the word appropriate, just, and it adds just and adequate, but it's using the keyword appropriate penalty. And I think, again, that goes to less about God meting it out, that punishment, versus it is the results of the sin. It's the inevitable results. There's, in fact, to be pulled out of those results, like Noah was, for instance, of the flood, is the thing that is kind of God's hand to save us from those things. So I don't know.
I got frustrated because it's just, why are the scriptures written this way? Like we spend so much time finding this God of love, but then I read the scriptures and I seem to interpret them the complete opposite.
Well, you had a little help with that. Meaning in this instance, and I'm going to say it that way because I don't want to make a statement that, say, NLT, for instance, is bad everywhere. But every version of the Bible, there is going to be these little struggles where the way that the translators chose to translate it might lean in a particular direction. So in this case, we see NLT chose to lean stronger to the idea that God punished everybody with justice without mercy in these cases where they were such bad people that he had to burn them up. I mean, I'm saying what we read in our head. That's not actually what it said in NLT, but often translators, we can read translations and we can see a particular leaning. I'm not going to call it a destruction of the idea or a completely, Satan version. I don't mean that. I mean that there's a particular leaning of the thought. So in this case, it sounds a little bit more than when you went over to New King James, for instance. So the value, I'm first going to say the value, Shady, of your question is really great. This is a great example of where we can, if we want, go through here and use the right translations and the right verses, and we can collect a completely different idea about God, completely wrong idea about God. It's not that difficult. And so if we come to, or again, talking about those who might have translated, if they come to it with the idea that this is all about, and here's to me where the main connection is. If it's all about God, who said, here's the rules, and if you disobey them, I have to have some death so that we can make it fair and just. And so either you got to die, or maybe we get a different version where Jesus dies. But anyway, that's sort of the mentality of the purpose of the entire mission of Christ and redemption. And when that's the way we have viewed it, thought about it, we will tend to translate in ways that will lean in that direction. Does that make sense? So, yes. So we're going to hit these verses that in you read it in certain translations, but you'll notice if you, on every verse, if you choose to check 4, 5, 6 translations, together, I find they're not going to let you just totally lean in one direction. They're going to have a little bit of, wait a minute, this says a little different, that says a little different. And we got to get to where we grab a hold of some things that are at the top, meaning of highest priority of understanding. Like, if you've seen Jesus, you've seen the Father. So when we run out on the limb of kind of in the dark at guessing at the Father's face, we will tend, like this one hits you, it wasn't you that made that up. It's sort of a thinking an idea that's out there everywhere. It tends to hint in that direction. But if we back up and go, wait a minute, it's got to fit Jesus. And Jesus, I don't get that picture from Jesus, just Jesus, right? With this, wow, he's running around punishing everybody. So it'll lead us to questions like this, Shady. I want to ask you, since these were some great thoughts of yours. When we think about those that this is talking about, those who died in the past, is it true that they died or would have been put to death for a true fact that they sinned? Were they sinners? Flood, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes.
They were. So in the idea of legal law, where the sin is worthy of death, would that uphold that, wait a minute, you couldn't say this was unjust?
Yes.
However, our sense of justice is quickly agitated with this question, I think, I'm guessing for you, Shady. The next thing would be, well, wait a minute, what if they didn't know or understand? Like Jesus said, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and she had mentioned that, if she's still on, Graham Maxwell had suggested that maybe there was some that believed, but they couldn't get to Jesus or get to Noah.
Right.
And then that really set the ball rolling. Like, that's unfair. Like, he would never.
All right, so that leads me to the next point I want to make. Perfect. So the next one, my next question is, did they receive, meaning those that were put to death, Sodom and Gomorrah, flood, whatever you want to put on the list, did they receive the real just penalty that is the full penalty of sin?
No.
No, they did not, because they received temporary death or temporal or natural, or, I mean, there's several ways you could say it. Sleep death is the way I like to say it. They didn't receive the death that God was really talking about when he said, the wages of sin, or the day you eat of this tree, you will die. That death is the death that is the experience of full rejection of God, and then full separation physically to match that is then into death for eternity, right? And nobody has received that. So even though the verse says, well, they received a just reward, the truth is they didn't really receive the full just reward. And the reason is there's still that complication point that you're bringing up, which is, well, what if they didn't know? Do we know if they knew, really understood? Do they need a chance to really know and understand, and so on and so on and so on? Which is why then when we come back to ideas like the justice and mercy concept about God's really working at revealing the truth, and then when truth is understood, accepted, or just understood, I should say, then there's the option of it's fully accepted unto eternal life, or permanently rejected, like over and over and over until the heart will not change, will not turn. And at that point, justice won't just be about those who die. Justice will also be about those who live for eternity. In other words, they're receiving justice as well. So when we grab that and we say, well, where did we get that idea from, this idea of justice and mercy, or how the judgment works? Well, where we got it was from Jesus's teachings back in John. And now we're back to our most important point to hang on to, which is we got to come back to understanding everything based on Jesus showed us what God was really like. So our nature, our fear, our worry tends to reach out there into that dark space and imagine God in this way or that way, even from the instance of, I read this verse and poof, that's what came in my head, my thoughts, and then it can spiral down until we go, wait, where's Jesus again? And we look in his face and we go, okay, I must be confused about how this really works because I don't find that in Jesus's face. And that's where, and I'm only describing, I'm using you, Shady, to describe the activity, but it's one that I have had to go through again and again and again as I reread, I re-look, I restudy, I reevaluate, and every time it strengthens the clarity of who and what God really is like, and helps me see these words. And when you read that first version to me, NLT, I did not hear in my brain, it didn't go, oh yeah, like those people in Sodom and Gomorrah who got burned up and they really deserved it. I heard, well, let me read it from New King James again. For if the word spoken through angels provided steadfast, every transgression and disobedience received a just reward. What I heard right there instantly was that, well, so God has been working at treating everybody fairly, and he's not forcing anybody to accept him or reject him. And those who are rejecting him, at least to some degree, sometimes in love and kindness, have to be given a timeout or a temporary death so that God can keep working on bringing the truth out. To who? To everybody, to the entire universe, even those who have died. Because we're going to get to the third coming where the whole story is told again. But see, that's a lot of info in my head connected to those words that is a totally different play the tape than the tape you got. But that tape used to play in my head and haunt me, right? So I know what that is. It's not something wrong with you. It's actually legitimate questions, and we keep going around it to look at it again, evaluate it again, and have more assurance than before as God unfolds it that okay, yeah, my thought about God keeps being incorrect. Maybe the translators were a little incorrect in their view when they chose the words they chose, but ultimately in the stories of Jesus is where we find that clarity of who and what God really is like.
Yeah, one of the questions, Bobby, that came to my mind as you were saying that is, and I think maybe I know the answer to this, but it's still good to get the question out, is what about those who seem apparently to go into the grave in total ignorance of the character of God? I mean, it seems the ultimate goal is for his character to be revealed so that humanity has the opportunity to make an informed decision, but it just seems like logistically there are some who go into the grave just never really seeing that picture. And so how is that accomplished?
Well, so the logistic part, which is it is a great question, John. The logistic part is probably the hardest part for a human, where we deal with infirmity and temporary. We don't really know or understand eternity. So we deal with, wait a minute, but they were alive, now they're dead, now what? Now they can't learn anything. We sort of view everything from that one little moment of time. And so logistically, it's not really possible at this point to explain or totally understand, I think, how God is going to solve that for everybody. I do know this. Jesus's teachings and his words prove to me that God will never, ever do one unfair thing in an eternal consequence towards somebody. He won't force them into the kingdom, and he won't force them out of the kingdom. How he's going to work that, I know it's important. Like, let's take Shady, for instance, this idea that the flood was a temporary measure, had to put a lot of people into the grave, like most of the planet, except for 8 people, because evil had become so rampant and so complete that there wasn't a way to preserve the truth. Well, even that, some would argue, well, how's that fair? Because God's wiping out all his enemies just so he can keep his program going. And okay, you could make that argument, but if God is going to, without permission from humans or from heaven, work this to where his real character is fully comprehended and seen, and the power that it can accomplish in humans, that needs to be seen. If that's the goal, then all these temporary measures will be okay in the end, when that full comprehension understanding is then affects and is available to everybody. And how that can fix, say, the guy that John, like we're talking about, who he just had, from our view, no opportunity to know and understand. I can grab onto what Romans says, which Romans at least assures me that, but there's ways for God to talk to people and work in people and help them know the difference between, good and evil or whatever, even in those who've never heard of him. So I have to trust that the Holy Spirit is working on that with every person, and that their eternal destiny isn't set by the timing in which they lived, nor in the timing in which they died, but rather what was the condition of the heart, open or closed. And if it's open, if it was open even a tiny bit and can continue to be open, God knows which resurrection they belong in. And so an open heart will belong in the first resurrection. The closed heart, meaning closed and can never be open, will belong in the second. And the point of those two different resurrections isn't to force anybody to stay in those two boxes, but rather so the universe can see clearly that when God separated and said, those people there have rejected me for eternity, no matter what they knew or didn't know information-wise, and this group has accepted me for eternity, then it would be unfair, I would say, only if God didn't give them a full chance for that to see played out. Like panoramic view, what if the whole story was told again? What if the evidence was presented? And how will they respond? And in seeing that response, which is an event in the future that I'm describing, is the only place you're going to see the full assurance to our question of, so was this never, what if God treated anybody unfair or shut them down a day too early, put them in a grave, but they would have accepted him the next day, right? So those are questions we have that I can understand by faith, how that is going to be handled and resolved. And what I mean by understand by faith is by understanding Jesus and what he taught and what he did, it tells me how God will handle and do and be in the future, because with him there's no shadow of turning. But I can't fully comprehend, knowing with assurance that that is fully true, as in now I've seen it with my own eyes. They accepted and they rejected. So Jesus tells the parable of the teaching about the sheep and the goats, and he says the angels will separate the sheep and the goats. My obvious question is, well, wait a minute. I also heard something about wolves or goats in sheep's clothing. Did we not make any mistake anywhere putting people in the wrong group? That will be fully answered at the second resurrection, or what I call the third coming. That's a very good question.
So the resurrection, second resurrection, is really when the true separation of the wheat from the chaff will be fully revealed.
Proven, right? Proven, yeah, as in, proven. Let's say in the resurrection, in the first resurrection, let's say there was somebody who actually lived during the time of Sodom and Gomorrah and burned up in the city, or say 10 years, they died 10 years before, whatever. But they're in the first resurrection. We might have the question, well, wait a minute, how is it okay for them to be here? They were in that wicked group. But as we watch, the evidence will reveal itself that they are open and affected by the Spirit and the power of God. So then we would have the question, well, what about, there was nobody else, just this one person out of Sodom and Gomorrah? And then we will watch as the rest are raised, panoramic view given, and then they prove of themselves that, yep, they are fully rejectors. This is never going to be about God just saying they are, and therefore they're stuck out there or stuck in here, right? But yeah, the proof in the pudding, so to speak, is an event in the future, third coming.
Yeah. Okay, Shady, now we're going to ask, does that help?
Yeah, it helps. I seem to feel a little discouraged.
That's okay. I think that what is discouraging, Shady, a lot is really over all this time, and we still, not meaning us personally, but the human story that seems to so often, like we did go over that with the study we did the other night about the coming out of herd my people. The evidence is continually stacked up that we're always running the wrong direction, and God is often having to do these extreme measures or whatever you want to call it. And so it seems like, oh man, how's this ever gonna stop or quit? Or how am I ever gonna stop thinking the wrong thing when I read the verse? That could be connected in there too. The only solution to that is, as we drink in again, the life, I'm going to call it the life of Jesus, and behold it again. It's actually pretty discouraging, even, and I'm going to use that word because you did, in just reading and studying in the Old Testament continuously. I find that often the Old Testament will, after a time, if you say you're just in there for days and days and days, will feel overwhelming and confusing because
That's why even just watching the news and all that stuff.
Right, Chris, things that are just always on the negative. We have to be going, like often I'll recommend to people in their devotional life, don't do devotions in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, anything back there. Your devotions, well, I'm just using that as a word, devotions or your fill your heart up time should be only about Jesus. And what I mean by that is that's where you drink from the good news and the source. Now, the rest of it is great study. It's useful study. It's maybe history. It's the background. It's the surrounding stories that help us understand more what is said by Jesus and Peter, James, and Paul. However, even in Paul's writings, I don't usually recommend, oh yeah, there's good devotions, go read Hebrews or go read, they're great things to learn and know, don't get me wrong. But the fill me up, the give me confidence about the goodness of God, that only comes in the stuff that's directly about Jesus. And then actually what happens is you start seeing like Hebrews, for me, it got exciting again the last few weeks just because I started to see, again, more clarity of that truth about Jesus in Hebrews. But when we read Hebrews and we're not seeing it about Jesus, or Galatians or Romans even, like people read Romans and they believe it says that, nope, God is going to pick and you're either in or you're out based on his choice. That's like coming out of two little verses that sort of sound like that out of the whole book of Romans. And you'd have to throw out Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John just to establish that doctrine or that theory. So again, devotional, fill me up, that's about Jesus. And then as we read the other stuff, we will more and more see Jesus in it. Even like imagine being able to watch this horrific story about the earth opening up and swallowing hundreds of Israelites, and yet being able to see in the story Jesus, the meek and lowly, loving, kind, gracious, rode in on a donkey, wept over Jerusalem, Jesus, as the one who was in the pillar of fire and cloud, who was on top of Mount Sinai, that was the one doing the activity of all those other stories. See, that's at first sounds like quite a stretch, right? Like, no, wait a minute, God in the Old Testament was harsh. But the more we dwell on and look at Jesus and his character, the more we will see it in all those other places, even though the writing, the way it's written. So part of your observation was interesting, Shady. It's why is it written this way? and it's a good question. I don't know that I have a quick, easy answer for that, except to say that the further back the stories are, the less details we currently have just in the Bible, because we lost the part that's passed down verbally generation to generation, in the sense of, if we grew up in that culture, like in the Jewish culture, they wouldn't have just had the scrolls. They would have had also the verbal and backgrounds to the stories that were passed on from family to family or generation to generation, that we're so far away from those stories. It's like, man, how do we even wrap our head around what was going on with those Israelites in the wilderness that made it so that God had to open up the earth and wow, look at all those people went down into the dirt. So that's my thoughts on that one. So it's okay if it feels a little discouraging, Shady. Don't have to think that that's the something being totally wrecked or at the end. We love to keep spending time with whoever's got the questions, and whatever feels discouraging, going back over it again and again. So with that, let me pause on that while Shady's thinking about that and ask, has anybody chosen to work on Hebrews? I kind of tossed it out there to read the whole book from top to bottom and see if you could come up with, what the main point of that was. Anybody work on that? I'd love to hear from somebody what they're getting out of it.
So, Bobby, this is Aunt Jenny.
Hi, Jamie.
I didn't realize we were to work on Hebrews, but
It wasn't an assignment. It was just something that got tossed out there.
Anyway, Rich, I wanted to tell you something.
Yeah.
Rich and I went to go to a Bible study on Thursday nights with a group of people, and we're going through the book of John. So we come to John 5, and it's where Jesus healed the man by the pool of Bethesda.
Yeah.
And told him to take up his bed and walk. Well, in John 5:14, it says, afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, see, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you. So immediately, one of the ladies in our group said, that sounds like to me a threat. Yeah. And I'm thinking it's more of a warning, don't sin anymore. Of course, we all know we can't do that, but.
Well, yeah. So that's the dilemma. We could make it a soft or a harsh threat, right? We could soften the threat maybe by calling it a warning, but it still may not really get to the full, like, how do you remove that as a threat?
Yeah.
Anybody else got any thoughts on that one?
I have a lot of thoughts on that one.
Go for it.
The Bible is very specific on giving instructions, very specific on the requirements that God has. And I think that it takes every step, and Jesus took every step to give those warnings. And it was out of the gracious and goodness of his heart that he did so. I don't see it as a threat, like shake your fist in my face threat. I see it as, this is the path you need to walk. And it's spelled out in black and white all throughout the Bible, from beginning to end.
Okay, good. So there is a way to be able to take away it as a threat, just from the beginning there, what Dave is saying about the fact that Jesus knows something. He knows it's easy to fix this guy's physical problem. Right? That was easy for God. God just speaks it and it happens. So that's not a problem. But there's a bigger problem that he wanted to draw the man's attention to, and it wasn't really connected to what made him, in this case it was a blind man, right?
He was a crippled man.
Or crippled man, the crippled man. So in this case he's crippled. So he knew that there was a bigger problem than being physically crippled, and what was that?
Gosh, it could have been anything from diet to genetics. Who knows? I don't know why it was labeled accident.
He was wanting to get to the heart, that it's not just physical healing, but it's the inner healing that we need.
So spiritual healing, meaning fixing what's deep down in the problem in the soul, right? And so let's just think about that for a minute, because that was exactly right, Chantel. It's true, there could have been other physical issues. Maybe he needed to learn to change his diet or whatever, some things that would affect him physically. But physical loss is not, it's only a shadow. It's only a representation of something bigger. So in Desire of Ages, it says that many who came to Jesus for physical healing, after they were healed, many of them also recognized their need and were healed of their spiritual maladies. So what's the spiritual malady or the spiritual problem that God is really working on trying to fix?
Knowing the heights and depths of God's love.
Okay, so knowing his love is the beginning of the fix. Identify what's the illness.
Lack of faith.
Him.
Good, Dave. What did you say, Chantel?
We don't know him. We don't trust him. We don't.
Right, so we don't know him. We don't trust him. And I'm going to use Dave's specific wording, because lack of faith or thinking that we can fix this without God is the problem. In fact, and then I'm going to tie in Hebrews here real quick, because as I've been working on Hebrews as a whole, I've been working on this, the idea I tossed out to others to try to find me the 3 main points. One of those main points in Hebrews I'm seeing, not that I'm right, because there could be other points, but as I'm working on it, one of the main points is the big problem of being stuck under the law, being enslaved under the law, being under the curse of the law, or being a slave to dead works, or thinking that somehow by doing dead works you're going to accomplish salvation. So if we take the man, Jenny, that you're bringing up, he's crippled, now he's healed, and Jesus comes to him and says, now stop sinning or a worse thing is going to come upon you. If where the man goes with that is, oh yeah, we do have a list. So let's find that list again. What are we supposed to do and not do? And we get Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy out, and we start making that list. Are we at that point back to doing dead works or repenting from dead works?
Back to doing them.
Huh?
Yeah, definitely back to doing them.
Okay, so if I teach somebody that now that they were physically healed of their crippledness, that the goal is to understand all the laws of food and health and what you're supposed to eat, drink, wear, sleep, where to dress, how to dress, what building to go to on what day, am I giving them what we would call true salvation or dead works?
Dead works, going through the motions.
Dead works, going through the motions, a list of some sort. So really, it's kind of interesting because Jesus doesn't differentiate with the man that difference. He just says, stop sinning. Where it's going to make the difference is, what if that man, now this part, we don't have this part of the conversation, but there's 2 options that I see. One is the man could say, well, okay, let me get on that like I've never gotten on that before in my life, and go to the list and start working. But what if he said,
anybody ever, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to ask, anybody ever see the movie My Life, Michael Keaton?
I don't recall that one.
Man diagnosed with cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets a Chinese healer to come in, and he doesn't do a thing with drugs or medicine or anything. He gets him to forgive and repent and make peace in his heart with every bad feeling he's ever had.
Huh.
I see a lot of parallels right here.
Well, I was going to say, so what I was catching about the parallel then is the parable or the parallel of not returning to the physical list. Or in Hebrews and Corinthians and Galatians and Romans, very clear, Paul is almost screaming at us, stop going back to the law. Stop going back to reading the list of your do's and don'ts and try to do better than you've ever done before. In fact, that will only bring you to what he calls the ministry of death. The ministry,
a higher stress level.
of content and a higher stress level. And so at that point, we should be going, well, hold on, wait a minute, but there's got to be a solution somewhere, right? You just don't go on, breaking the whole list forever. No. So the hope that Paul is really bringing out is the new covenant, which is we're just going to use that term real quick to say, this is about coming to an actual living God, not a table of stone, not a list on paper, but a living God who has the ability to start filling us with, transcribing into us what meets and fits the law of love, the character of God, the character of grace, the character of love. And having that written in the heart will change everything about what we do, right? So the fruit is a result of the fact that the roots are actually rooted, or the branch is actually, connected into the vine. And when it's connected into the vine, fruit grows. And we go, yeah. So we got, what's the list of fruit again? And we're back obsessed about that list of fruit. So in the New Testament, we're given a very simple list: love, peace, joy, long-suffering, graciousness, right? Self-control. So you could even boil it further down. Jesus said, love Lord your God, neighbors yourself. Well, the man he was talking to said it, but Jesus said, yes, that's the whole law. And then Paul goes one step further and says, love your neighbor as yourself is the entire thing. So if that becomes then the fruit, and rather than clinging to a list or running to a list to accomplish, we look to Jesus, we behold Jesus, we weep and wail and cry about the fact that we are not enough like him yet, and we plead with him to work in us to transform us more into his likeness. That's the new covenant. And Paul, what I was working on this morning for myself in Hebrews, he actually says you cannot have or live in the new covenant until the old covenant is completely destroyed in you, until it's been dead, until it's been killed, gotten rid of. It's got to be gone. And I'm like, wow, that's some extreme language. But Jenny, back to your question about this man, if we're coming from an old covenant perspective, meaning we got to have the list, and then we got to start working that list and doing the best we can and hoping God will make up the rest. If that's where we live in our approach to righteousness, you can only read that as a threat, meaning you can read it as a really harsh threat, like better or else, or you can read it as a gentle threat where he's just trying to tell you it's going to be worse for you if you don't, stop sinning. But really what he's saying is, the real thing is you're full of sin, and that's got to get fixed. So hurry up and fix it. And we're hoping that the guy responds with, but the trouble is I've tried and tried, just like I tried to fix my crippledness, and it didn't work. Because the parallel that Jesus wants on the table is, yes, you could not fix your crippledness any more than you could fix your spiritual deadness. So if you're willing, I will work in you to fix the heart problem that Chantel was pointing to, as much as I did with the crippled legs and arms and all that. Yeah. That's the only way to really see, and that's the only way to see the correct picture of what Jesus put on the table. And I would say that's the only, what I started to say is that's the only way you can view it when we're standing in and surrounded by new covenant understanding and thinking. So that was an awesome question. What else on that, Aunt Jenny? Anything else? But I'm not saying I fully answered it, so you can keep asking more questions if you want.
No, I have no more questions. I just was a little sad that came out of her mouth, that she felt like Jesus was threatening, because to my mind, it kind of told me that her view of God was a little messed up.
Yeah, it's wrong view.
Yeah.
We don't need to be like critical of people about that, but we do need to know. I mean, understand this helps me know okay, that person still, their view of God is tainted with Satan's toxin.
Yeah.
So then we can be in prayer and watchfulness to know or find or see some way to bless that person that God's already working on full time.
Right.
And so it is sad. It is true though, and yet it's everywhere around us. I mean, people read the wages of sin is death and only hear threat. Most hear that verse as God saying, if you sin, I'm going to have to kill you. Wages of sin is death. I mean, you sin, this is what you deserve. This, in fact, it kind of connects to the NLT version that Shady read to us about. It just sounded like, wow, this is just punishment, though. So we had that with wages of sin is death, and you, by human understanding, you can only come up with, yeah, it's right for God to put into painful punishment or destroy or kill anybody who's done wrong.
But how is that different from your mom telling you if you play in the street, you'll get hit by a car?
Well, so that would be more the correct understanding, right? God actually saying the observation is like the tree branch broken off the tree cannot live. That's not a threat. The trunk does not say to the branch, you know, hey, if you disconnect from me, I'm going to have to jump with my roots out on top of the ground and pounce on you and destroy you. It's just a natural, right? And so
it's what happens.
Yeah, that's the correct way to hear what God is saying about the wages of sin is death. But many don't hear it that way. Many hear it as God said, you disobey, I have to destroy you.
No, that's not how I hear it.
They're good. That would be back in Old Covenant stuff. So that was a good one that connects. Jenny, thank you.
If we look at salvation as healing and the rejection of healing is not healed, then, I mean, that is a very simple way of looking at that perspective.
Yes.
It's just like saying, you know, if you don't take, if the doctor's trying to heal you and you say, nope, I don't want healed, or gives you medication to be healed and you go home but you don't take it, then, and you know you're going to die if you don't, then it's the same concept.
Good. So go back to Jenny's question about the man and put it in context of here's a man who's a dead branch laying on the ground, no fruit, and actually the leaves have all withered and gone as well. That would be, I'm using that to talk about his physical condition of crippledness, is like it's a dry stick, there's not even any leaves. And then Jesus coming to him and healing the leaves. Oh, now he's got green leaves on there, but no fruit. And then Jesus saying to him, you know, if you continue in the life or condition that you're in, you're just going to go back and your death will be worse than before. Again, the tree wouldn't be saying that as a threat, because the tree is hoping that the branch wants to be grafted back into the tree to have not just his body fixed as in the leaves, but have the heart fruit as well. And so again, it's very parallel, very similar, but how you view that is going to totally be different depending on how well you know the tree or the vine, the vine once the branch is connected back in. The dead branch laying on the ground always tends to blame the tree or the vine. That's just our nature, right? Sin, we separated, and Adam said, well, it's not my fault, it's that woman you gave me. And the woman says, well, it's not my fault, it's that snake that you made. So really they're blaming the vine for their laying on the ground deadness. Human nature.
Whenever you can, always blame somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to like that activity. All right, who else has got something to add into this? This is all fitting together pretty well so far.
I don't know. I just see it as a parent. It's apparent. you know, and second chance after second chance after second chance. So the flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, things got too bad, cleanse it, let them start over. And we've always seemed to push him out of this world. And that's what's going on today.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah, and really the work of redemption or teaching of the gospel, we could even call it, is about understanding that many are, say, viewing the parent, because you used the idea of a loving parent, but their view of the parent is more like the boy who just wanted his inheritance so he could get out of there, get out from under the father's rules, right? And try it our own way, which we're doing a lot these days, even in the streets in the city, right? Just to reference current.
How's that working for us?
Yeah, how's that working? but that's not the only way we've tried it. We've been trying it in hundreds of ways.
For hundreds of years.
For hundreds of years. Even, I would even say, in building church, you know, in doing the activity of church, we've been doing the same thing. Well, so Lord, we got it this time. We'll read that list and we'll get more serious about it than ever before. And it's no different than the ones down in the street of the city saying, we won't have these rules. We'll try it our own way.
Yeah, like it's kind of, I mean, I just kind of have a thought, or it's kind of like that branch trying to jump back up on the tree and connect itself instead of the tree reaching down and grabbing the branch and reconnecting.
Exactly. And so in hundreds of ways, we've been doing this. But the work of gospel teaching, preaching is just to recognize the fact that, let's say, the boy who has this wrong view of his father, who's now ended all the way up in the pig pen. Remember, the next thoughts that came to his mind were, well, maybe in my father's house I'd be better off. Now, that didn't mean it instantly switched his view about his dad. It was just, well, maybe it's better than where I am now. And so they can't, what? So Dave, is that you got something on that?
I'll just say that was the moment of reckoning right there.
Moment of reckoning. But we tend to, even those of us that have been through it, we tend to go, so maybe I should go back to that thing, church, that thing that we decided we didn't want anything more to do with. So we have to get back to, what are those rules again? And there we go. But just imagine that as the boys walk back to the house. He hasn't seen his dad's face yet. He's just using his imaginings of what he left and the view that he had of his dad. And then the effect that it has when he sees the father running out there, robe around him, and everything dad does and says, and how it starts to change his understanding of who his dad is. That's really what the gospel ministry and the work of the gospel is about.
Oh, we all need that.
Yeah. Well, we got 20 minutes left here. Well, who else has got something?
Well, this is like our first time on, schedule wise. So I don't know. You want to jump into Hebrews, like you said? We're on the road, so we don't really have a Bible, but
I can certainly give you. I was thinking of maybe just giving you my quick notes on the outline I'm working on. Now, I don't want to take away the opportunity for anybody else to do this. The activity was to read through the whole book of Hebrews, anybody who wanted to, and try to find the main three themes or points.
Okay.
What is he talking about? Now,
maybe we wait on that. We missed that homework assignment.
No, that's okay. And again, it wasn't an assignment. So let me tell you, Dave, just for fun, the last I think it's been about 4 weeks now. We started in on the concept of what I'm just going to refer to as righteous by faith. We started with, I think I did it at your house, the spiritual fitness chart. Did we do that one?
Sounds
that was
familiar.
The one where we talked about depending on God instead of self.
Yes.
Yeah. So we started with that idea, and then we chose to read from Scripture only, anywhere in Scripture, what the explanation or the method system of righteousness by faith was versus righteousness by works. We did that. Then we sprung into Sabbath, how to have a new covenant Sabbath instead of an old covenant, how to have not a Sabbath of dead works, but a Sabbath of the living God. And so we went to there, and then we ended up in Hebrews because of that. And anyway, so that was our little journey, how we got to this.
Okay.
point. Last week we were in Corinthians. Charlie, is Charlie on today? Where's Charlie? Somebody remind me, it was 2 Corinthians where Charlie was bringing up the one about dead works in Corinthians. Anybody remember that? John, you got that on the list somewhere?
I was just going to call that. Faith and works seems like a long-standing war.
Exactly, and that's really what we were working on last week, was faith and works. And we concluded that if we have
Faith
a
brings
system,
about works.
well, we had a conclusion that if you're viewing that as two oars, like in the left hand you got works, in the right hand you got faith, or whatever, whichever way you want that to go. And now what you're doing is you're trying to row those two, that is still all dead works.
Yeah.
Versus coming to God, who can start to write his character in you, which will change and transform you, the way you act, the way you treat others, and so on and so on. So anyway, that was all preamble to this idea of Hebrews, of taking it and saying, okay, so when you read through Hebrews, I was curious what everybody else would find as the main 3 points. Now, Paul's very parenthetical, meaning he'll wander all over, but he's always on the same point. Like he'll go way over here and come back to make the point. And so what I'm looking for is what is those, and not that there's only 3, but what do you see as the big 3, the main 3 that he's making? So
okay, sounds like a good challenge.
Yeah, so I don't have to read my notes yet. I'm not quite done, so I'm happy to work on it some more, and then come back next week and give everybody a chance to tell us what you find as the main 3. So maybe we should call it an assignment, huh, Jenny? We'll make it the official assignment.
Just to let you know, we may lose you through this pass, but we'll hang on as long as we can.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dave. It's awesome to hear from you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to finally be able to join.
You, Chris Ann, as well.
Hi. I'm driving, so.
That's okay. Just telling you, happy to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear you too.
I got lots of salsa, Bobby.
Hey,
lots of salsa.
I'm in need of salsa all the time, so.
It's got my attention too.
Yeah. So we need to head to Montana here pretty soon.
Maybe skip over to Idaho for a night.
Oh yeah, Idaho. I don't know where I got Montana. Idaho. Yeah, we need to.
Yep. Well, welcome anytime.
We won't get in trouble with any COVID if we come visit you. I mean, with the rules over there.
No, we're pretty open. And our house is completely open, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, I was just meaning I think you guys are lighter on the rules even than Washington. But
yeah, we are.
That's good.
They take a political stance. I think it's all for show, but yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Nobody here is scared. Well, nobody in our house is scared.
All right, Shady, let's circle back to maybe anything else that we should add on that's really connected to the point where we started out with that question in Hebrews 2.
I'm looking at it right now. I mean, I guess you've always said not to just take one scripture and read before and after, which we didn't get very far because once we ended that one, I went on the whole
Got stuck there.
flood tangent.
Well, so let me ask you, Shady, because this would be part of that assignment I was just describing. Jumping backwards from 2 verse 2, what did you see as the main point in chapter 1?
I saw more of him trying to identify Jesus as the one that we should be looking towards, not false gods, or I guess more so the angels. He seemed to focus on the angels quite a bit in 1.
So in 1, he identifies, like in verse 3, that Christ is, and I'm going to ask you to read it from NLT in a second, New King James says, talking about Jesus, who being the brightness of his, that's God's glory, and the express image of his person. So that's a pretty tight identification that Jesus, the main role was that he was to reveal exactly what God is like, right down to his very facial expressions and the glory in his face, right? Can you read that one from NLT?
Which one were you reading?
Say chapter 1, verse 2 and 3.
Okay. And now in these final days, he has spoken to us through his Son. God promised everything to the Son as inheritance, and through the Son, he created the universe. The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God as he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. When he had cleansed us from our sins, he sat down in the place of honor at the right hand of the majestic God in heaven.
Okay, couple things. First one is, and I like NLT here now, even though we were saying it was struggling in chapter 2, but in that one, it actually used the word character.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else's version use that word, or what are the other options for brightness of his glory, the express image of his person?
Yeah, express image of his person is New King James.
Yeah.
Message says, this Son perfectly mirrors God and is stamped with God's nature.
Oh, nature. So it's going to use his nature, stamped with his nature. Anybody else got a different one?
Amplified uses the sole expression of the glory of God. And then, of course, in the quotations, it says the light being the outrain or radiance of the divine, and he is the perfect imprint and very image of God's nature.
Yeah, I was going to say Amplified is where this really years ago lit up for me. Wait a minute, that's what this is about.
And because he is the perfect representation of his being.
Perfect representation, of course, of his being. We might think that that's only about his physical, like he shows what God looks like. I've had a lot of people, that's kind of what they think the main point is that somewhere in that bright light is this physical shape that looks like Jesus. But that would be a very small point compared to the main one. But that's good, Chantel. Can you read, John, again the whole verse with all of the wording from Amplified? Don't skip any wording.
Sure. Yeah. Let's
Ready, Shady?
Yeah.
There we go.
But in the last of these days, he has spoken to us in the person of a Son, whom he appointed heir and lawful owner of all things, also by and through whom he created the worlds, and the reaches of space and the ages of time he made, produced, built, operated, and arranged them in order.
Okay, that was all verse 2.
Yep. He is the sole expression of the glory of God, the light being the outrain or radiance of the divine, and he is the perfect imprint and very image of God's nature, upholding and maintaining and guiding and propelling the universe by his mighty word of power. When he had, by offering himself, accomplished our cleansing of sins and riddance of guilt, he sat down at the right hand of the divine majesty on high.
So when you're hearing that from Amplified, that I still think is the closest you can get to hearing Hebrew without knowing how to speak Hebrew.
Bobby, one thing that just happened while I was reading that is that my mind switched on the last part of verse 3. Normally, when I hear the offering himself, again, I hear the old thinking, which is that Jesus gave himself so that he could die and then be, somehow the satisfaction to the Father. But this time when I was reading it, I'm applying it in the way I think it was intended by Paul, which is And that is based on the fact that he just spent 2 big sentences describing what Jesus was. And so if we look at this term, when he had by offering himself accomplished our cleansing of sins and riddance of guilt, how did he accomplish that? By solely being the expression of the glory of God, the light being, the outreign, the radiance of the divine, and he is the perfect, like, by offering to man, to all of us, the perfect picture of God, he is able to accomplish the cleansing of sins and the riddance of all guilt.
Good.
So again, our normal thinking is there's some satisfaction that happened of a need for blood versus and honestly, God being all knowing, he would know that Jesus would show up and be killed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was an inevitable result of putting himself in the hands of man. But the mission was not to just go and die. The mission was to go and live,
right,
and to show and to demonstrate the truth about God.
Good. So what we need to see out of this, by the way, that's one verse, verse 3, that has the entire gospel explained in one verse. There's other verses that do that, but that's a lot packed, especially when you go from the Amplified. So now we get over here to chapter 2, and we hit verse 2, and our old tape plays about this being justice served on the people. And we got a choice. We can either throw away what we just read in chapter 1 and run down the direction of the old tapes, which brings about a view of God that he is a bit harsh and vindictive, or whatever, wherever we want to go with that. Or we can go back and we can go, wait, hold on, I'm confused now. I got stuck. Let me go back and read, what was this about in the first place? And that's right what you're reading in Amplified, verse 2, which says, okay, so when I want to understand what chapter 2, verse 2 is about, it needs to be based on chapter 1, verse 3, 2 and 3. And what that does for us is it makes us ask a different question over in chapter 2. Chapter 2, if it were true that Jesus had to pay some blood penalty in order to make satisfaction for justice being served, then how would it make any sense that it's talking about the wicked in the past, that every transgression received its due and just reward? Well, is it getting just rewarded twice now? It got poured out on the Sodom and Gomorrah people, and then it got poured out on Jesus too. You see, that sort of should disrupt our mathematical thinking of a penalty payment and satisfaction, or appeasement is the word I'm really looking for. And even that should drive us right back to chapter 1 to go, what was this saying again? And in chapter 1, grabbing a hold of, well, this is about Jesus revealing the full truth. And while it might be argued by the law, then back to chapter 2, verse 2, while it might be arguable by the law that because of sin, death received, I'm talking about temporary, first death, that was just and was fair.
Plug in the car later.
We're still going to be needing to connect with, but then why does Jesus have to come and do anything? Because the whole rest of this book is going to start discussing about the work of Christ, the priest, and oops, I better not go too far because I'm going to give you my whole outline. But Christ as the priest coming to solve the real problem and the whole problem, and not just putting people in the grave because they sin. I'll stop there. So good, Shady. I'm glad you brought all that up.
What is the amplified version?
What is it?
Yeah.
Amplified was there was actually if you read in introduction in the beginning to explain there was a woman at some point in time, I don't remember the dates anymore, but where she decided, this is very confusing having all these translations, and they use different wording. So she got together a group of scholars, translators, so it was not one person, it was a few of them, and asked them, could you please write a translation that you don't translate for me, but you give me, for instance, if this one English word or one Greek word could be 3 words in English, give me all 3. So I can see what a translator is looking at. When a translator is working, they have to read the Greek word or the Hebrew word and go, okay, now what is that in English? And then there's like 5 or 6 options in English, which you can see by when you look in the concordance and look up the definitions, they won't give you just one English word, they give you several different things. So she asked them to make her a translation that would give you the full gamut of the English wording. And that's essentially what they did. And so you'll get to a verse like Hebrews, or one that I'll quote that we didn't just read. John 3:16 normally says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And Amplified, meaning what it would sound like more if you could read the Greek, is for God so greatly loved, dearly prized the world, that he gave up his only one unique begotten born son, so that whosoever would believe in, cling to, trust in, and rely on him might have everlasting life. I mean, you hear it that way and it's like, whoa, all that's in there. So that's why it's useful. I loved Amplified so much that I read it too much. Pretty soon I was quoting everything in Amplified, and people were looking at me like, what Bible are you using? So I backed up and I read mostly New King James, but it's a great reference to go, okay, let me read that in the Amplified now and compare that and see how it's like blowing up the whole meaning for me in there. So that's what
for the benefit of some, I don't know, there may be some who don't know about this program, but there's a program for the computer. I don't know if it's if they have an app yet, but called eSword, and you can get all kinds of different versions and switch between them. That's what I'm doing when Bobby says, hey, read this verse in different versions. I've got 10, 11 different versions that I can just quickly flip to as we're in one section or another of Scripture. And most of that is free. Some of them, they ask you to pay for the version, $10, $15, but it's just nice. And there's lots of different apps that do that. So find an app that allows you to switch between different versions, and it's a nice way to study the Word.
Well, let's have a closing prayer because we're approaching 12 o'clock here. And then I wanted to say afterwards, though, if anybody wants to just chat about your life, things going on, blessings, praises, prayer requests, we can take a little time and visit about some of those things here after we have prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your love and your grace. Thank you for the struggle, actually, of what it takes to go past just seeing a casual understanding about you, to really have the opportunity to pursue, like John did, like Peter, James, and John did, to know deeper and deeper, and to keep asking you, could you explain what you mean by that? And so through your Son, as we're seeing here in Hebrews, to be able to behold your face, to study your facial expressions and the lines on your face of love and care and concern, so that we might really know and understand you through looking at Jesus. Thank you for that opportunity and for the blessing that comes from it. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so next week we'll continue on with our righteous by faith and working in Hebrews. I know Charlie was wanting to work some more in 2 Corinthians too, but we'll do Hebrews next week and then get into what's going on there in Corinthians maybe. All right, anybody got something you want to toss out, either in continuing the discussion or sharing something else?
Was there something you wanted to do at 2:30 before we continue moving on here?
Yeah, 2:30. I kind of got excited about the conversation last Thursday night, which started with just the idea of what does it mean to come out of Herd My People. And anyway, I was still thinking and working on that for the next day or two. And I think I had said something about, we read together Thursday night, we read together Stephen's sermon in the book of Acts. And then I had mentioned about reading Daniel's prayer. And then I forgot to look up what the other thing I said to read. But anyway, so I think maybe John will, at least as a starting point, have the idea of continuing that discussion for those that weren't there Thursday night, maybe rebuilding some of that discussion and then reading together Daniel chapter 9. It is, I think I said 11 the other day, but it's 9, chapter 9. And anything, maybe others did read what we talked about Thursday night and want to discuss it. So we'll go back to that conversation about what it's really about. Come out of Herd My People, come out of what, come out of where, but mostly looking at what chapter was it in? Was it 7, Acts 7? Who remembers where we were?
Well, we did spend time reading Stephen's.
Yeah, what chapter was that?
That's a good question. I could find it real quick.
And then Daniel 9, which we didn't read the other night, so it would be good to read that one together.
Yeah, it's Acts 7. Yep.
Acts 7. So Acts 7, if you weren't there Thursday night and want to read Acts 7 after lunch before you come back at 2:30, then we won't have to reread the whole thing together. But we could read all together Daniel. And I got to look up what the third one was I recommended. So, sorry.
Daniel chapter 9.
Yeah, Daniel chapter 9.
Okay. Dave, I heard you saying something kind of behind all of our jibber jabber. Was there something you wanted to say?
No, I was just running the times through my head. I heard 2:30 and I was like, what time is it? I looked, it's noon. And then are you guys getting back on at 2:30?
Yes.
Yeah. Same link too if you want to join us.
Okay. Well,
yeah, we have lunch and then come back.
We'll see where we're at signal wise.
Yeah.
We may be unavailable.
No worries.
We don't know yet.
We're always on at 10:30 and then at 2:30.
Okay. And yeah, I get a text every now and then from John. Schedule wise, we've been working hard and not been able to make it on. I'm glad we were able to today. It was nice.
Yeah, and John sends out an email reminder to all of us, so maybe he can add you to that list if you want.
Yes, he's been real good about that. I usually get a text, but if you want to do email too, that's fine.
Okay. Sounds good.
Aunt Jenny.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Amber.
This has nothing to do with anything important.
Okay.
I had to tell Aunt Jenny that I found her Costco olives, the green olives with jalapeno and garlic.
Oh, those are so good.
That she brought over to our house that one time.
Eat 'em.
And it was so good. And I finally found them at Costco. And thank you, Aunt Jenny, for introducing us to them.
Those are
I love those things too.
Yeah.
How are things in general, Amber?
Actually, the smoke finally cleared over here.
Yay.
Over the night, and it rained, so we finally saw sunshine this morning, and it's such a blessed day. Yeah. So
us
better.
too, Amber.
Yeah.
Us too over here in Pendleton.
I saw.
It's kind of overcast, but I'll take that over.
Any day. Any day. Yeah.
We miss our gatherings at Walla Walla.
I know.
Nice to be able to do that again.
Yeah. I am looking forward to it, and green olives involved.
Barb, any other last thoughts you wanted to add to what you and Shady were working on? I don't know if she's available to talk or not.
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay, we'll let you guys work on Hebrews more if you want. Were you going to say something, Sherry?
No, I didn't know if she was still on emergency or not.
Oh, yeah, Barb. Sherry, John's wife, were you going to say something? I saw it pop up on you. No. Well, thank you all that have been sending encouragement and help to me. Those of you that do, I just want you to know I appreciate it greatly. It's always fun. Some of you actually use the old mail system, and I get these little cards. So thank you, Mom, out there. And but anyway, yeah, just I want you all to know I appreciate it very much. Your prayers and encouragement while I was doing some recovery, feeling better, and been going to PT, so that's been good for me. I got figured out here that with this smoke and snow coming, I'm going to have to do something about getting a machine I can walk on inside, I guess.
I think you need to head to Boise and have some good old salsa.
There you go. That'll help too.
That'll clear you out right now. I'll tell you, I guarantee you that.
All right.
And
well,
everybody on here is invited, so one and all.
I'll let you and John figure out what that schedule is going to look like. At the moment, I'm quite available. I got my daughter's wedding potentially coming up here if COVID rules allow it.
Oh gosh.
In October, then I'll be down in Oregon way. So, but on that, yeah, that would be fun, Dave.
Yep.
Definitely.
Open card right there.
Okay.
All y'all.
Okay, well, I'll hop off so I can do a lunch break, and we'll be back at 2:30 to see everybody. Glad to see you on here. Happy Sabbath.
Hey, Bobby.
Happy to you too.
Yeah.
Yep. If we can get back on, we will.
Okay, see ya.
All right.
You said
Take care.
you said to read Acts 7 prior to 2:30, and then
If you can, if you got time.
And then
Specifically, it was Stephen's sermon, up to the point where he gets stoned. Anyway.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, and then we'll kind of review what we worked on Thursday, and then we'll dive into looking at that in Daniel 9, which is Daniel's prayer.
Okay, great.
But again, we were, as you're reading, we were working on the what does it look like, the coming out of her, my people question. So that's the point you're working on. Okay. All righty, we'll see everyone a little bit later.